All right, here we go. Attempt number 4 at making this video. It is now midnight, April the 10th, and in this video, we're going to be reviewing the next set of meta threats, I think, that are going to be popping up post-Hiram and Photosphere ban. Again, April 10th, or I guess April 11th now, since we're on midnight. We've had a couple of days of testing. You're seeing what's being played at the top tables. You're probably testing yourself. If you're testing at a reasonably high level or just locally with good players, you're probably noticing more and more Emerald popping up in the meta. Again, doesn't take a genius to call it. It was pretty apparent that once the suppression of the Ruby removal was lifted from the game with the Hiram ban, effectively making Ruby Sapphire and Sapphire Steel a little bit worse. And Sapphire Steel was just oppressive in a different way, but you're seeing Diablo come back up because the answers to Diablo have been drastically reduced. And as a result, the Emerald decks, particularly the two variations of Discard and Emerald Amethyst Discard, which was still good in the previous Sapphire meta, it was being played, it did have results, it was winning against Sapphire decks as well as other decks, but also Emerald Steel Discard is definitely popping back up as a big meta contender, and you're seeing top players gravitate towards these ink pairings as well once again. In my opinion, Emerald Amethyst is propelled up to tier 1 status. It may not always be that for the rest of this format, but right now it does seem to be winning quite a bit. It does seem to be very effective. And the list I have on screen here is not even a list that I would run. Like I wouldn't play Queen or Lucifer. There are definitely some spicy tech options that, they'll probably be revealed in a couple days, but I'll probably post a separate video for members just outlining a couple of cool tech options because you're seeing the meta adapt already to the Diablos. Like for those of you that don't know, again, this is where I would get on the rant, so I'm going to really try not to do this. But Lorcana is inherently a game where you go -2 at the start of the game, right? For the first couple of turns, you're inking and you're playing an interaction, usually an interaction that won't replace itself in the first couple of turns of the game. So you're drawing once per turn, but you're going -1, right? So your hand naturally gets reduced down quite low until you get a draw engine online. Rapunzel, Hiram before it was banned, Maurice's Workshop, obviously a ton of Amethyst cards like Genie, Rabbits, locations, whatever. The Diablo takes advantage out of all of that. Every single deck needs card draw, right, in order to be competitive, because again, you're running out of resources at a certain point in the game. Well, when I have a card like this that says whenever you draw, even when you draw for your turn, which in my opinion this card shouldn't have done that. It should have been when you draw outside of your draw phase. I'm going to go +2 every turn. I'm at least drawing once for my turn and once for your turn. So that -2 interaction that I get every turn, especially since my deck is low to the ground and I can stop inking after a certain point. Not that they do, because they have so much card advantage that they just ink to the moon anyways. If you've seen these matches, if you've played these matches, you know that. This card inherently imbalances the game state. It is an extremely oppressive card. I equate it to what Max C is in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is why I advocated for, and I know a lot of people disagreed with me, but hey, maybe you guys enjoy Diablo discard metas. I personally don't, but that's just my opinion, and I'm happy to be wrong on that. But this card is so oppressive when I play against it. Let me know in the comment section if you've played against this card when your opponent is smart and they, don't just play it out whenever, but they actually see what you're working with. Wait till you're down to your last few resources or deal with your Diablo answers, ripping your songs out of your hand with Ursula Deceiver. You're down to your last 3 or 2 cards in hand. They force the discard, then shift the Diablo. They take care of your board or just leave you with a false sense of security. I have a decent board, but I have nothing on my board that can deal with a Diablo. And then they drop the Diablo. They just out advantage you. They deal with your board eventually, and now you just can't do anything to get back into the game because literally I've been spectating top matches where some players have like 15 cards in their hand and the opposing player just can't do anything. I'm not even kidding you. I spectated a game 3 out of 1500 elo match where it was a game 3. Both players were on Emerald. The player on game 3 goes turn 1, small Diablo, Maleficent Spy, sees the opponent's hand. I don't remember what was in it. I'm pretty sure the opponent played a Diablo because it was an Emerald Mirror as well. And then the player, passes back to the other player, and the player goes, turn 2, ink, play a Hidden Cove, shift Diablo by discarding Hypnotize, and then move the Diablo to the Cove, and then I think they quested. I don't remember if they played Friends or quested, but like as soon as they turned the Diablo sideways, the opposing player just resigned the game on turn 2. I don't blame him. I mean, I didn't see what the opposing player had in his hand when the turn player or the player on the play played the Diablo Maleficent Spy, but I'm assuming it was no Diablo answers. I mean, that's probably why the player felt confident in dropping the Diablo there. This thing coming down on turn 2 and being on a Cove, I mean, to be fair, that is like the busted nuts, right? It's like what Amber Steele's song doing like on the play wheel with like a perfect shift line and you don't have an answer and they just go like +5 off of it. Yeah, pretty broken interactions that if you wanted to take care of these broken interactions in the game, you could have done more with a ban list than just ban the Hiram, because like I said, literally use the word vacuum. I said the vacuum that this ban creates, because the suppression of the removal from Ruby was doing a lot to check a lot of the other broken stuff in the game. Again, I'm trying not to get on a rant here, guys, so just bear with me, but I do think that Diablo is quite oppressive. Again, there's a lot of answers to Diablo, right? All the steel songs, all the steel actions, Ruby cards still answer it. You know, this Diablo answers the new Dual Ink Diablo answers this Diablo. Genie's answers this Diablo. There's a lot of cards that do. But again, when you play against good players, they know how to play the Diablo. They know how to protect it. They know when to play it out. And you're basically playing this very annoying war of attrition. Maybe I go with my Prince John line and force you into awkward discards, and then I play the Diablo. Now I'm just like off to the races, right? Because I'm drawing off Prince John, which is another toxic card in my opinion that should never have existed ever since it came out in set 2. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up soon, guys, because I'm getting to the point where I'm ranting and I can't afford to make a 5th recording. But that's why this deck is strong. If you want the reasoning as to why this deck is good, why it's a tier 1 deck in my opinion, I've just given it to you. Okay, you've got a very oppressive, very aggressive way to discard cards. You're playing Diablo Turbo, where you're literally getting out what I think is the best card in the game at the moment now in this Diablo. Yes, it has answers. Yes, people will adapt and start teching against it, and it will fall off in the metagame a little bit, and I'm happy to see when that happens. But for right now, this card is running rampant. Let me know, are you testing online? Are you testing at locals? Are you seeing a lot of Emerald? I bet you are. I know I have run into a lot of Emerald. I am playing Emerald myself. It's very strong, especially this deck. And I like this deck a little bit more than like the Emerald Steel deck, which is crazy to say, because I was very, in theory, the Emerald Steel deck can technically also beat anything, but it can beat anything in a more secure way because you have the removal backup. But this deck just feels so much smoother and so much easier to play. Like, it's so much less prone to bricking, despite it playing one more uninkable than the Emerald Steel list usually will play, in my opinion at least. Well, I mean, yeah, to be fair, this deck list does need to be updated a little bit. But, like, it's crazy how strong this deck is. Like, you go into a matchup and you just feel confident that you're like, yeah, I don't care what you're playing, because I'm gonna discard your hand and I have Diablo, and you don't have the oppression that you once did. You don't have all those Ruby removal cards. You want to play Ruby Amethyst into me? Be my guest. I mean, this card has historically had a good matchup into Ruby Amethyst, so I don't have a problem with that. The Ruby Amethyst list, to be fair, right? I mean, you can see this. This is like Ed knew when he posted this on day 1, and even this list I think needs to be updated a little bit. But did he add it in? Oh, he did update the list today. Okay, from what it was. Yeah, you can see he's edited it. But like this Pegasus Flying Steed, like the reason people are playing this is because of Diablo, right? Like this is terrible into the Emerald Amethyst, because like they just sing a song and out it right away. But that's how, not, I don't want to say desperate, but that's how prevalent the Emerald Amethyst deck is right now, that you can afford to play this 3-in-1, because yeah, the Emerald Amethyst deck doesn't have any steel songs to out this one willpower character, and you're using this thing to trade into the opposing Diablo, right? And it's a very effective check, to be fair. So I do like to see those adaptations, like my Amethyst Steel list, which was the deck that I liked to play prior to the Hiram ban. I mean, I like the Sapphire decks too, but like I like Amethyst. I think Amethyst metas are the best metas, because both players have cards in their hand, both players are making interactions. The Goat is another card arguably that could be banned, because once that card hits the board, it's like, if you're at 18 and you play Goat, you're like, well, I'm on a 1-turn clock now and I just lose the game if I'm not literally getting game this turn. Anyways, tangent aside, this Helga went from being literally a terrible card, because it gets blown up by every Ruby card, right? Small Sisus, big Sisus, brawls, etc., to now being a very, very good card, because it's a Challenger 3, which means it deals with Diablos on Coves. It can survive against the Diablo challenge on Cove, even though it probably gets taken out the next turn because it already has 3 damage on it. But at least you wasted an opponent's interaction to take this card out rather than questing or challenging something else. and it has evasive during your turn because that's how it takes out the Diablo. It is an uninkable. It is a 2 cost. It does, compete with things like the Dock or the Calhoun. Maybe you can afford to play two cost uninkables. You have to really understand what the Diablo is and how to play it in combination with the Prince John in the context of the meta that we're in, right? In order to understand why it's so good. Like, the discard package does so much to enable the Diablo. It's disgusting, right? Because normally, especially my initial reaction where I was like, yes, Steel Song, the suppression of the Sapphire decks lifted because that was Steel Song's like arguably some of their toughest matchups. They're in a really good position, right? But I mean, if you're going up into a discard meta, it's kind of like a 50-50 because what does Steel Song like to do? They like to exhaust their hand, remove your board, have almost nothing left in their hand, and then sing a whole new world. Well, if you get down to those final few cards and your opponent still has cards because they're drawing, right? You're great against an Amber Steel Song deck. You want to draw cards with your Amethyst cards? Great, I'll wheel them away. Go ahead and build up card advantage in your hand. I'll build up card advantage on the field, and then I'll reset our hands. That's how Steel Song wins, basically, right? That's a very basic interpretation. But ever since set 1, that's why Amber Steel Song has been so powerful throughout the meta games that we've had since set 1. But if the Emerald decks rip the whole new world out of your hand, because you don't want to hard cast this, right? So you're waiting a turn after you develop the singer that you need to sing this. And if your opponent reads that and they're like, I've saved the Ursula Deceiver, or I've saved a couple of discard interactions, maybe 2 or 3 discard interactions to force you to discard the whole new world. If it's one of the last 2 or 3 cards in your hand, I think you instantly lose the game as a Steel Song player there, right? Like, because you have a board that's usually pretty weak or underwhelming, but at least you have a board. Your opponent probably doesn't have much of a board, if any. But you're going to reset the hand state, and you have a board and they don't. But if they stop that, and your generally weaker board then gets dealt with, and you have nothing in your hand, you have no way to replenish your hand, that can be a little dicey, right? I mean, you do have Rapunzel, but again, are you going to Rapunzel in the face of the Diablo? No. Are they going to rip your songs out of your hand? Probably. Are they going to wait to check before they develop Diablos or make sure they have contingency, like multiple Diablos? Yeah, probably. So it's kind of like a 50-50. Do I have enough songs to push through the disadvantage of getting my cards discarded to survive the Ursula Deceiver rips, the multiple discards in a turn rip? Like, you choke me out when I'm on my final 2 cards where I have my answers to the Diablo, or I've put them on the board and you out them. I mean, though, I don't think there's anything really that they would play on the board, really. I mean, on my list, I'm playing 1 Aerial, but like by the time this comes down, it should be very much, I shouldn't say very much decided, but like you should know who's in the driver's seat of that matchup. But yeah, that's just like a reason why the discard decks are so strong right now, is because there's not enough opposing card draw along with the removal that you need that will sufficiently check the strategies that Amethyst Emerald will deploy. They have so much card draw between the Amethyst cards and the Diablo, and then discard your hand too. It's why the deck is winning so much. Like, it's why it's a really good option. They don't see the cards they need right away. Well, they're drawing so many cards off the Amethyst cards anyways. They have amazing questing pressure. I guess this is the other thing we can talk about too before we move on to the Emerald Steel list, is we are arguably very close to a Genie-oriented meta. But I think because of how strong Diablo is, we're just not there yet. We were not in a Genie-oriented meta last format, right? You guys understand that. We talked about this a lot. If you've watched my videos in the last format, Ed proved that when he won the North American Championships without Genie. It was a liability. I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm not trying to say, like, it was very easy for people to pick up on this, because if you were testing, if you were seeing top matches, if you were the Ruby player or you were the player playing the Genie, you would see either I'm removing your Genie before it does anything. Like, it drew a card, sure, but like I've brawled it, I've ice block C-suited it down before Coil was released, right, last format. I'm dealing with the Genie before it quests. Like, it's not questing. If I'm playing the Genie into a Ruby matchup, into a Steel matchup even, you saw this in top tournaments too. People were playing like for Zeus. People were playing for the Genie. That is a lot less prevalent now. The Ruby removal is gone, right? The whole Sapphire Ruby interaction, which was the main suppressor of Genie, similar to how it was the main suppressor of a lot of cards like Diablo and other things as well, is now lifted. So Genie is in a very good spot, and I call this in my meta report, in my reaction video, in my market watch video, that Genies are likely going to go up because, in this deck, you're probably playing what are the 2 strongest cards right now in Genie and and Diablo. Again, I think the meta will evolve and adapt to those cards, and we'll see what decks end up winning. You know, I'll be happy to see Ruby Amethyst back on top, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's online. It's a lot of Emerald, and it's very oppressive. That being said, you know, maybe top players can play around discard a lot better than, you know, people online. But you know, there are very good players online too. All right. Hopefully, again, this is like what recording 4 I said. Hopefully this one's like digestible, and you know, I wasn't ranting too much. The Emerald Steel discard list is also going to be something that's very powerful. Again, similar reasoning. I'm not going to go over it all again, but Diablo, Prince John discard. The thing that you have complementing you with this list is Ursula, Deceiver of All. Again, not having to worry about all of those Sapphire and Ruby interactions absolutely decimating this card. Very likely that this card survives. And then this actually has really good play into, if we do get into an Amethyst-oriented meta, because the Emerald Steel discard deck will be able to actually use the Ursula to sing very powerful songs like Storm and Strength. And what's nice is this card singing Storm is 4 damage onto opposing genies if you run into that matchup. Again, if you go into that Amethyst meta, while you draw 2 in the process. Very, very powerful. I don't know if you played Radigan. Again, I was probably just putting in there to test, but I didn't even test this deck yet. I think there's probably better options to play than this now that I think about it. But I was like, well, it's a 2-quester. If the opponent doesn't have Genie, if they do have Genie and I'm pressuring Lore, like they forces their Genie to crash into my Radigan, right? They lose their Genie, I lose my Radigan, but maybe I'm able to quest with it first instead of, you know, waiting for them to quest. Whatever. But yeah, this deck is still very, very strong. The Cricky, also very good. It turns all of these weaker bodies down here into threats that can take out opposing high strength characters, or sorry, high willpower characters. But the other main reason, you know, you got Ursula, Deceiver of All. Obviously, you got Diablo, Prince John, discard packages. But Pete. This card I called going up. In Canada, I've already seen it listed at like $5. Yeah, $5, but it's still hovering around 3, I think, in Canada. It was like $1 though before, for non-foils. The card is very good. If you're ever thinking about playing Emerald Steel, no matter what variation you play, I mean, obviously the discard is the strongest variation, but you know, Emerald Steel has so many cool different lines that it like, or decks that it could play. You know, it has the damage-based stuff, which is kind of cool. It's got like a really robust Floodborn package. You know, Bucky aside, we're very much past that. But it's just discard is the best way to play it. And this card is going to be, I think, a staple in every kind of Emerald Steel deck. And if the discard cards eventually get banned, or the powerful ones eventually get banned, and you know Emerald Steel is still a force in the metagame, I think every deck plays the Pete Space Pirate still. The ability to, first of all, stop the opponent from singing songs is very good. But the fact that this just turns your 3-drop Pete into an absolute monster on 4 is crazy. Because this card comes in, it does what it needs to do in stopping your opponent from playing actions. And then if you're able to shift this Pete, you know, maybe they were planning on singing a song, they couldn't because of the Pete. Then you shift the Pete Space Pirate, turn it sideways. Now they can't sing the song anyways. They're forced to hardcast it. Puts them behind on tempo, right? Pretty strong stuff. Going from one Pete to another. Even raw playing this out, putting that pressure on board, a 5/5 body for 6 isn't even that bad when it quests for 2. Has an ability when it's exerted. The resist also comes into play. Stops your Mr. Smee from taking damage when it's exerted as well. Just all around great synergistic card for Emerald Steel. And it's part of the reason why it propels this ink pairing to a pretty competitive setting. I'm not sure if you need to play the Crickies as well, but again, like I mentioned, it turns all of these things into absolute monsters, which is pretty good, right? Like your Deceiver already does what it needs to do. Your Diablo already did what it needed to do if you don't need it for the shift. Your Prince John may have already done what it needed to do and discarding it, forcing your opponent to empty out their hand, discarding their hand, you getting the advantage off of it. And then you're just turning these cards into, let me deal with your threats now. Because historically, the Emerald Steel deck and, you know, other Emerald discard decks have had hard times dealing with wide boards. The Cricky does solve that problem. Made even more worse by the fact that in the Emerald Amethyst version, you can play Crabs and Crickies. But yeah, we're past the Emerald Amethyst version. Another thing that this Pete does that's pretty significant is it enables the ability for you to play Brunos again without feeling terrible. Top players were saying that playing Bruno felt really bad in the Emerald Steel discard, and it's definitely understandable because you technically want to cap out at 4 in the previous lists, but now you have the ability to use the Bruno by singing it, even with the Cricky, even though you'd rather quest with the Cricky. But the game plan of Emerald Steel Discard is I need to control the board and I need to control your hand. Discard your hand, sing all my songs to remove your board. So I'm not trying to quest. I don't care if you're getting ahead in lore, because once I set up my game plan, I'll be off to the races. It doesn't matter how many turns after I discard your hand and deal with your board, you're just not coming back into that game. And this is why I don't like the discard decks, right? But I don't know, maybe people are a fan of it. Yeah, very strong deck. Again, if you're testing online, you're probably running into this more. You're probably running more into the Emerald Amethyst, but this list is also still around, doing work in the metagame at high levels. It just goes to show you, right? Like, the next broken thing when it's not Hiram and the interactions that it enables, it's the next best thing. Unlocked is the Diablo. Crazy, crazy stuff. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.